Welcome to News Nexus. Today we explore a story that fascinates economists, frustrates citizens, and shocks the world again and again. Why does Argentina's economy keep collapsing? Argentina is a nation blessed with incredible natural resources, fertile land, cultural richness, and human talent. At the dawn of the 20th century, it stood proudly among the wealthiest countries on earth. Buenos Aires was called the Paris of South America. Immigrants from Europe flocked to its shores, believing they were moving to a land of endless opportunity. And yet, more than a century later, Argentina has become one of the world's most notorious examples of recurring economic crises. The country has defaulted on its debt not once, not twice, but 9 separate times. It has suffered from runaway inflation, currency collapses, and political instability that continues to this day. So what happened? Why has a nation with such immense potential repeatedly fallen into economic chaos? Today, we'll take a journey through Argentina's history, politics, and policies to understand why this cycle keeps repeating and what lessons the world can learn. In the early 1900s, Argentina was a rising star. Its economy grew rapidly, fueled by agricultural exports: beef, wheat, corn, and wool. The Pampas Plains were among the most productive farmlands in the world. British and European investors poured money into railways, ports, and industries. Living standards were on par with France, Germany, even the United States. For a time, it looked like Argentina was destined to join the world's economic elite. But prosperity was built on a fragile foundation, almost total dependence on exporting raw goods. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, global demand for those exports collapsed. Argentina's economy was shaken to the core, and that shock marked the beginning of a long cycle that has never truly escaped. In the 1940s, a charismatic military officer named Juan Domingo Perón rose to power. His vision, known as Peronism, shaped Argentina for decades. Perón emphasized social justice, labor rights, and state control over key industries. Workers received higher wages, better benefits, and a strong sense of pride. His policies made him immensely popular. But there was a cost. The government began to spend far more than it earned, financing subsidies, welfare programs, and public sector expansion. Instead of saving during good times, Argentina borrowed and printed money. Inflation became a chronic problem. And Peronism wasn't just politics. It became a culture of expectations. Argentines came to rely on state protection and benefits, making reform politically dangerous for every leader who followed. From the 1950s onward, Argentina entered a storm of political turbulence. Military coups toppled civilian governments again and again. Each new regime tried its own economic experiment, swinging between free market liberalization and strict state control. This constant back and forth left investors nervous and citizens exhausted. Imagine running a business in a country where tax laws, currency rules, and labor regulations change dramatically every few years. Consistency, the foundation of stability, was nowhere to be found. And every swing of the pendulum left the economy weaker, not stronger. If one word defines Argentina's story, it's inflation. Since the mid-20th century, Argentines have lived with rising prices as a daily reality. In the 1970s and 80s, it spiraled out of control. By the late 1980s, hyperinflation had arrived. Prices doubled every few weeks. Shoppers rushed to the grocery store the moment they got paid, because by the end of the day, their wages might already be worthless. This wasn't just inconvenient, it was devastating. Savings evaporated, businesses couldn't plan, families lived in survival mode. And behind it all was the same problem: chronic deficits. The government spent more than it collected, and to fill the gap, it printed money. Once trust in the currency was broken, it became nearly impossible to restore. Inflation wasn't the only curse. Argentina also fell into the debt trap. To cover its spending, the government borrowed heavily from international lenders. But because of instability and poor policies, repayment was always a struggle. The cycle repeated: borrow, spend, fail to pay, default, restructure, then borrow again. In 2001, Argentina defaulted on more than $100 billion, the largest sovereign default in history at the time. Unemployment soared, poverty spread, protests filled the streets. For many, it felt like the country itself had collapsed. To escape disaster, Argentina often turned to the International Monetary Fund. Bailouts provided emergency cash, but they came with strings attached. cut subsidies, balance the budget, reduce spending. These austerity measures often hit the poor and middle class the hardest. Prices rose, wages froze, jobs disappeared. Politicians faced a brutal choice: follow IMF rules and lose popular support, or spend freely and trigger another crisis. It was a no-win situation. Then there's the currency itself, the Argentine peso. Over decades, it has been devalued, replaced, and reissued multiple times. People have lost faith in it. Instead, they save in US dollars whenever they can. Real estate is priced in dollars. Savings accounts are kept in dollars. Businesses prefer dollars for large transactions. This culture of dollarization means the peso never gains stability. Whenever a crisis looms, citizens rush to convert pesos into dollars, accelerating the collapse of the local currency. Fast forward to the present, and the pattern continues. Argentina still suffers from inflation that often exceeds 100% a year. Poverty levels are rising. The peso keeps falling. And every new government faces the same impossible choice: spend to satisfy voters or reform to stabilize the economy. The COVID-19 pandemic made matters worse. Economic activity plunged, millions lost jobs, poverty deepened. Even as the world recovered, Argentina remained trapped in uncertainty. For many citizens, crisis is no longer an exception. It's simply a way of life. Why can't Argentina break free? The answer lies in 5 forces. First, chronic deficits. The government almost always spends more than it earns. Second, weak institutions. Constant political shifts destroy trust. Third, dependence on commodities. Agriculture makes the economy hostage to global price swings. Fourth, a distrusted currency. People prefer dollars to pesos. And fifth, short-term politics. Leaders think about winning elections, not fixing long-term problems. Together, these forces lock Argentina into a cycle of collapse. But Argentina's story also offers lessons for the world. It shows what happens when governments prioritize short-term popularity over discipline, when political instability prevents consistent policy, when citizens lose faith in their own money. Countries that build strong institutions, credible currencies, and balanced budgets tend to thrive. Those that don't risk falling into the same trap. And yet, despite everything, Argentina still has enormous potential. It has fertile farmland, abundant resources like lithium and natural gas, and a highly educated population. It could become an agricultural and energy powerhouse. But for that to happen, the cycle must be broken. Budgets must be balanced, even when it's unpopular. Trust must be rebuilt in the peso. Institutions must be strengthened, so policies survive beyond one administration. And investment must be encouraged not with promises, but with stability. The road ahead won't be easy. It may take years of sacrifice, discipline, and painful reforms. But history proves it's possible. Nations like Germany, South Korea, and others have risen from disaster to global success stories. Argentina could do the same, if it finds the will. Argentina's economy is not just in crisis, it's in a cycle of crises. Inflation, defaults, instability, they are not one-time events. They repeat, generation after generation. For many Argentines, it feels like destiny. But destiny can change. If Argentina commits to real reform, builds credibility, and moves beyond short-term politics, it can reclaim the promise it once had. A nation that, not too long ago, stood among the richest in the world. Until then, Argentina remains a cautionary tale, a country blessed with abundance, but trapped by its own mistakes. Thank you for joining us here on News Nexus. If you found this deep dive valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our explorations into the world's biggest economic and political stories.